Then here come the first known European in the continent of Africa, in Egypt, known to us today as Alexander the Greek. At that point, after that, those Greeks came into Egypt and in other parts of Africa. After Alexander came in, then other Europeans out of the Slavic areas of Europe, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Albania, Hungary, etc., came into the continent of Africa. Okay, they are known in history as the Parthians, etc., etc. And then you have an influx of Europeans coming out of the southern areas of Russia into Iran, Iraq, etc., etc. Now, mind you, that was no religion now, until the Europeans came in there and began to try to get the ancient Egyptians to make them into gods where they, the ancient Egyptians, could worship them. So in my book, I'm explaining that. That's how religion first began on planet Earth. After the Europeans, after Alexander the Greek and the other Europeans coming thereafter, and the Ptolemies, who ruled Egypt after the death of Alexander, who died in 323, the Ptolemies took over the rule of Egypt. And from the Ptolemy rule of Egypt, the man-made creation of religion began at that point. In my book, I walk you through it, the historical origin of Christianity. And that was the second question that you had that was attached to this question. What was the second part?
Well, I wanted to know how then that Christianity wedded itself to the ancient traditional worship of the Africans, and was there any carryover? Was there anything within that ancient worship that became wedded to the new Christianity, the new way of worship that the Romans concocted, forced upon the people at that time? And then why did they cut off the old religion and begin this new religion?
Well, again, Clemson, that was no old religion.
Old way of spiritual, the spirituality. Okay.
There was no old religion.
Right.
So take religion out.
Okay.
Always remember, man created religion.
Yes, correct.
Okay. The religions of the three major Western religions, the base foundation of the three major Western religions, Christianity, Mohammedanism / Islam, and Judaism, the base foundation of that is ancient Egypt. They have used the civilization and the culture of the ancient Egyptians to create these various religions. In fact, it was the Coptic Egyptians who created Christianity. It was the Coptic Egyptians who created that image that we know today as Jesus the Christ. It was the Coptic Egyptians who taught the Europeans from the Hagia Sophia, the world's first Christian church and the world's first university for Europeans. See? No one is telling you that. That was the world's first university for Europeans, and the teaching staff or the faculty of the Hagia Sophia were comprised of Africans. They were the teachers of the Europeans.
And what were they teaching them?
They taught them a variety of subjects: art, writing, medicine, husbandry, building. The whole thing that we call civilization today was taught there in the Hagia Sophia. Only that one institution. That was the world's first Christian church and the world's first university for Europeans. You see? But in order for that to continue, you would have to have more than just that one institution. So that's the reason why in the 15th century, okay, almost 1,000 years after the Hagia Sophia was created and built by Justinian and his wife Theodora in 532, finished in 537, you come upon a era in history, in European history, that's called the European Renaissance, or the Renaissance of Europe, which the first Renaissance was in the 15th century, and that was of art and crafts. Okay? And then the second Renaissance was the literary Renaissance that was done in the 16th century. And I explained that in my early comments about the Europeans prior to this, me speaking now.
Now I just want to, and I'm moving rapidly, but I want to deal with how the Romans crush the existing spirituality of the indigenous Africans, the indigenous ancient Egyptians. What was the process? I've heard that they raided temples, killed priests, and so forth, but explain how and why it was necessary to totally wipe out the spirituality, the worship, the way that they carried on life, practiced their spirituality.
Well, see, they didn't raid temples and etc., etc. What they did was close them down. Ptolemy I, Lagi, called Soter. The word S-O-T-E-R means Savior, who is the image that we know today as Jesus Christ. After the priest society of ancient Egypt refused to worship his image as a god, along with their ancestor deity, Osiris, he began to close those temples down throughout Egypt. So there was nothing there to really raid, and he confiscated all of their divine writings and put them and housed them in a temple in Memphis, Egypt. The temple in Memphis, Egypt, those Melkite Coptic priests and priestesses took his image after making a composite of their two deities, Osiris and Apis, coming out with the name Osiris and giving this name and title to Ptolemy I, Lagi, giving him a supposed Osiris-like spirit, thereby making him supposedly a god. But the priests and priestesses throughout Egypt refused to accept this image, which is a foreigner, into their priest society, so he closed them down. You see? So there was no religion for them to destroy, because the ancient Egyptians had no religion. You cannot destroy an individual's spirituality unless you kill him. Then his spirituality is dead. Okay? Now, his spirituality can be misguided. Like today, our spirituality as African people are misguided into these various religions, these man-made religions. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, etc., etc. You see? They've been misguided, but you can't destroy an individual's spirituality unless you kill the individual. See, so the ancient Egyptians did not have their spirituality destroyed, but misguided and misdirected. Okay? And this is how this came about. My book, The Historical Origin of Christianity, walks you through this process. If an individual buys my book, get the revised edition.
Let me ask you then, things like the Dead Sea Scrolls, and well, let's deal with them, and then I want to go on to, because these are evidence, supposedly primary evidence that support the integrity of, say, the Old Testament and the Torah and something like that. They try to show that these things went back into antiquity, so they have Dead Sea Scrolls and supposedly papyri and things of that nature that have parts of the Old Testament and so forth on it that will take it back to antiquity.
The Dead Sea Scrolls are 20th century European fakes. Okay?
They didn't really exist.
Only when the Europeans created them. See, the Europeans can take anything and make it look old. They got the chemicals to do that. And of course, you know, they got the institutions to disseminate these lies through. You have to understand that. These Dead Sea Scrolls, supposedly, these Dead Sea Scrolls, they were found in 1947. 1 year prior to the creation of the illegal state called Israel. Very, very convenient. Okay? Now, I went to the University of Chicago. I took a DSS class, a Dead Sea Scrolls class, to find out why these Europeans and how they are trying to authenticate the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay? You cannot authenticate or use the Dead Sea Scrolls to give any authenticity to religions such as Judaism or Christianity. Like I mentioned before, one has to know ancient history before he can understand anything about these religions. Okay? You have to understand that there was never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form by the name of Jesus Christ, of any race, creed, or color. Once you understand that, then that wipes out or put question